but me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2020 NFL Draft using our brand new grading scale from 5 to 1. Each pick will be assessed a score, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. We will then tally up all those scores, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating 2 things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Saints, next, NO, New Orleans, next. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in this series is none other than the New Orleans Saints. And you know what's actually funny is that someone put no next. And I was thinking to myself, they don't want anybody to be next. So I was going to go to the next person. And then I thought about it. No, they're actually saying NO next. So I was being a little slow there, but that's nor here nor there. This is a 4-player draft put together by Mickey Loomis and company. And there are only a select few of teams that could get away with this. Probably only the Saints. They might be the only team on that list currently constructed that could go and have a 4-player draft and be perfectly fine because their roster might be the most complete in all of football. When you look at the Saints, they've done such a tremendous job of drafting and combining free agency over the last 5 years or so that they're not really hurting at any one position. Yeah, they could use an upgrade here or there, but you know, when you look at the totality of their roster in comparison to everyone else around the league, there's not a bunch of glaring holes here. And so they could get away with the 4-player draft. They could pick which guys they thought fit at the picks that they were at, maybe move up and select a guy, which they did twice in this draft, once at the very beginning and once at the very end. But when you look at this Rams draft, it's much like their offseason, man. Kind of quiet, ho-hum, straight to the point, get what you need, get out. They got Emmanuel Sanders at the receiver position. I would have liked them to have selected a receiver, but they got a bunch of stuff. When you look at the names on their list of receivers, they can pick out, you know, and then when you got Drew Brees, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day, we know that firestorm that he created may have created a bit of a rift in that locker room, if you will. I've always said that, I've contended that. I didn't always feel this way. I thought initially maybe he should retire. I think that, and I said this on my podcast, they're going to forgive him, all right? They're going to allow him to apologize. He's already apologized 8 million times. He's going to do it once more. When they get there, he's going to address the team. They're going to forgive him. They're going to move on. I don't know if everyone will accept his apology. I think most guys will. They'll move on. They'll play football. We'll see if it ultimately ends up being a galvanizing force for them or if it ends up being divisive. We'll see. I don't think it will be. I think there's enough leadership in that locker room that will allow those guys to come together and play football that will allow them to have a chance to win. We'll see if they actually do get the job done or not. But this draft, even though it's only 4 players, not going to hurt them in that department. It's only going to serve as a strengthening mechanism for this football team. Look, it's abbreviated. It's quick. I'm trying to get in and out on this thing. So I'm going to give it to you very rapidly, but it's a very impressive 4-player haul, if I may say so myself. So let's get to the proceedings this evening. As you know, and I've already stated, only 4 players. You see them on the screen in front of you. I've got my write-ups of all 4 of those players, so we'll break them down. I'll be reading from my write-ups. So we get it kicked off in the first round. 24th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Michigan, Cesar Ruiz is the pick. 6'3", 307 pounds, 33-inch arms, 5'0", 840, out of Michigan. 13 games, 13 starts at the center position. 36 games, 31 starts in his career for the Wolverines, 26 of which came at the center position, 5 coming at right guard. I had an early 2nd round grade on him. I thought the 1st round was a little too rich for my blood. He wasn't exceptional enough for me to be a 1st round pick. If someone would have taken him 32nd, you know, like I thought the Chiefs might have done, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But 24 was a little bit too early for me. I didn't see the dynamic center ability that I've seen with some of the former first round picks that we've seen come through this draft, whether it's Ryan Kelly for the Colts as the 17th pick or the Cowboys taking Travis Frederick some years ago at 32, or I believe it was 32 or 31, somewhere in the back end of that first round where they took him 28. They've never been 32nd because they haven't won the Super Bowl, but shade, I know. Anyhow, he was my number one center on the draft board, however, and he was the first center taken off the board, so I'll give you my comp for him. And boy, do you guys love your interior offensive lineman or what? And you already drafted this guy. You drafted him last year, and I'll give you my comp. So I kind of gave you a hint as to who he reminds me of. But good combination of size and athleticism inside. Plays with outstanding leverage and knee bend. When you see a guy playing with outstanding leverage, a lot of times that means they're able to bend their knees. He's a guy that usually is able to win that leverage battle. So you're not seeing him get blown back very often, able to stand his ground firmly at the point of attack. And generally the guys that can bend their knees and have good leverage and also good hand placement are the guys that are able to do that. Fantastic seal and uprooter. This is a guy that is not generating a ton of movement in the run game, but what he does do extremely well is he seals guys at the point of attack. He'll wall off a defender, and at times, if you're not careful, he'll scoop you and dump you. All right. I saw him do that a couple of times where he took a guy, sealed him, and the seal was so effective that he dumped the guy on his back and he plopped down on top of him. So he does a really good job of creating a barrier between the ball carrier and the defender. And he's that barrier. He's that wall in between the two, and he does a great job of doing that. Snap to set is quick, efficient, and allows for readiness for whatever may come. He does a really good job of pre-snap identifying, okay, that guy may be coming. That guy is definitely coming. I've got to be on my P's and Q's. I'm going to snap this thing. I'm going to get up, and I'm going to pick up this guy, and if this guy comes late, I'm going to get a piece of him too. And so he does a tremendous job of identifying MDM, most dangerous man, and any threats that may be coming, and gets himself in a position to be able to handle whatever is coming by snapping a football and then being in a ready position thereafter immediately. Head is always on a swivel looking for work. I love guys that in a recession looking for work, man. Could easily be at home collecting unemployment. Look, I got nobody to block. I'm going to just stand here, stand pat, stand firm, make sure nobody comes up this A-gap. Nah, I know it's a recession. I probably could make more money at home collecting an unemployment check, but I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go look for some work, man, because there's some work out here to be had. And so he'll go help the guard out. He'll go get a piece of that guy, give him a shot to the ribs or knock him down onto the ground. And so always looking for work. Good feet and lateral agility to mirror. All right, can recover and also get to the second level as a puller. Does a really good job of using that agility to mirror guys so you don't see guys beating him a lot of times with quickness up front. Does a great job of shuffling his feet and keeping them at a great length away from each other, great distance, and which gives him a solid base and foundation, but also the lateral agility to be able to slide his feet, then change directions to pick up a guy that may flash late, or to be able to come out of his stance, skip pull, get to the outside, and get to the second level as a puller. Does a really good job of doing that as well. Plays with an edge. He's a little salty, man. He's a guy that's a little rough around the edges. You know, plays with a little bit of a nasty streak. He's not a nasty boy per se, but he does have that streak in him, and so does play with a bit of an edge. Not his weaknesses, not a powerful drive blocker. So if you stick a guy in front of him, he's not necessarily going to blow that guy up and move him 2 yards off the ball. But like I said, he will create a barrier between that defender and the ball carrier. And generally, that's all you need in this league, especially when you have a talented runner like Alvin Kamara in the backfield. They don't need much space nor daylight to make something happen. Could stand to get stronger and anchor a bit better. Yeah, I think he could get a little bit stronger. I think there are times where you might see a 6'5", 320-pound defensive lineman with long arms be able to really uproot him and disrupt things in the middle. I just described someone that just entered your division that you'll be playing 2 times a year that could give a guy like Cesar Ruiz some trouble in Brown for the Panthers. So those kinds of guys are going to give him problems like a Derek Brown, in your division. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get a little bit stronger, which will give him the kind of anchor that it's going to take to be able to stand up to bullies like Derek Brown moving forward. But he can get a little bit stronger to anchor down, but he does a really quality job of doing that. And look, there aren't many Derek Browns walking around the NFL. You're only going to see those guys every so often, but those guys do have the ability to give a guy like Cesar Ruiz a little bit of trouble. But like I said, solid pick, a little bit earlier than I would have preferred. But I've always said, get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. And the Saints have always put a high value and premium on on interior offensive linemen to protect and keep the integrity of the pocket intact for Drew Brees. Not the biggest guy in the world. The last thing he needs is the pocket closing in on him. So they've always spent more resources, to me, on the interior offensive line than they have on the outer skirts of the offensive line. So this kind of falls in line with what they've done during the Drew Brees era in New Orleans. First round, 24th overall selection. Offensive lineman out of Michigan, Cesar Ruiz, for me, is a 4. He reminds me a lot of Eric McCoy, and generally I don't give offensive line comps, but Eric McCoy is who I thought of, the guy you drafted last year. And what I think this ultimately means is McCoy is going to be more so your guard, and I think Cesar Ruiz is going to be your center moving forward. And I think that's the combination that they're going to roll with. Eric McCoy is very versatile, can play guard or center, and I think they're more comfortable with sliding him over and inserting Cesar Ruiz at center, and that will probably fortify the inside of that offensive line. As we move forward to the next selection for this Saints football team, go to the 3rd round now, 74th pick overall. Edge rusher out of Wisconsin, Zach Bond is the pick, 6'2", 238, 4.65 40 for the Wisconsin Badgers. For 2019, 19.5 tackles for loss, 12.5 of them were sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass breakups, 1 INT in 14 games for the Wisconsin Badgers. For his career, 30.5 tackles for loss, of which 15 were sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 4 pass breakups, 2 INTs in his career for the Wisconsin Badgers. And so this is a guy that kind of showed up on my radar a little bit later on in the process. And I was thoroughly impressed with him off the edge. There's people that say, oh, he's too short, he's not heavy enough. You can find whatever reasons you like not to like Zach Bond. Oh, he was using PEDs, whatever the case may be. All right. And I think that did knock him down the draft board because I had a late first, early second round grade on Zach Bond. And I thought he was a guy that easily could have been taken at the end of the first round. I thought he was going to go at the back end of the first round. But then, the PED thing kind of popped up. And for whatever reason, he took those. It knocked him down the draft board, but that's your gain. Everybody else has lost your gain. So I think this is tremendous value getting him here in the 3rd round where you got him. I had him as my number 3rd edge rusher, and if you wanted to consider him a linebacker in this draft, then he would have been my number 4 linebacker. But I consider him an edge rusher, so he was the 6th edge rusher taken in this draft. He was my number 3 edge rusher. So you see where I feel like this guy has value. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on. But strengths, explosiveness. That's the first thing you notice about Zach Bond off the edge is he's explosive, man. Gives tackles fits with his explosiveness off the edge. He's able to create a shorter edge and turn the corner. And then that's the next thing. Gumby-like bend around the edge. Not everyone is capable of doing that. That's the thing that separates the elite speed rushers from the average speed rushers, or the guys that are really good, maybe slightly above average speed rushers, is If you can't bend, dip, and rip that corner and shorten that edge, then guys are going to be able to recover and push you around the pocket. And so you're not going to be able to fully run that arc. Now, if you're able to bend, dip, and rip to finish him off, then you're going to be able to flatten to the quarterback. And that's going to get you 4 or 5 more sacks a season than the guy that can't do it. And so his explosiveness coupled with the fact that he can bend the edge, and he's 6'2", and the guy that's blocking him is more likely than not 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", makes it that much harder for him to be able to bend down and reach him to stop him from turning that corner. So there's a lot of things working in the favor of Zach Bond being able to turn the corner and shorten that edge. Explosive get off the snap. And that's kind of what I just talked about. That explosiveness, you see it on the get off. And he's got that DeMarcus Ware type of get off and bend around the corner. That Robert Quinn type of get off and bend around the edge. Not many guys can bend like that. You know, most guys aren't flexible enough to be able to dip and rip and bend the corner like Zach Bond can. And those are the guys that generally win in this league. Move Rolodex. This guy has figured it out as a pass rusher. He understands the more the merrier. The more tools I have in my toolbox, the more options I have in my Rolodex, the more I can go to potentially bail me out of a jam. And so he's got the spin. He's got the STP, which is speed to power. He's got just the speed rush. He's got the dip and rip. He's got the long arm of the law. I just named 6 different moves, or 5, excuse me. I know guys that come into the league with one move and can't for the life of them figure out how to add another one in there just to give them something to change up to. This guy's got 5 moves that can beat you at any time. Speed to power. All right, if you got elite speed, then there should easily be an STP in there somewhere. Some guys don't understand that concept. Well, he gets it. Dip and rip. All right, I beat you around the corner. Now I'm going to stick my outside foot in the ground, which is going to allow me to plant and drive to the inside. Now I'm dipping, I'm ripping, and I'm going to the quarterback, and now he's tripping. All right, and so I love it. Want more of it. So I love this guy's move Rolodex, which is why he was so high on my list of edge rushers, because he had the explosiveness and he had the move Rolodex to match. Coverage ability. For as good as he is rushing the quarterback, he can also drop into coverage and give you a little something there because he's fluid outside, and you can see him dropping at a 45-degree angle underneath that hook or underneath that slant and giving you an opportunity to get an interception or even force that quarterback to turn it down. Those 2 interceptions he had this year, you saw great examples throughout his career of him doing that. But this year, that interception he had was a great example of him dropping underneath a throw that the quarterback just simply didn't see him dropping underneath and plucking the football out of the air. Versatility to rush and drop into coverage, kind of spoke to that already. We know he can get after the quarterback. The 12.5 sacks this past year in the Big Ten was, to me, a big time number he posted in a conference chock full of quality offensive tackles. And then the ability to drop into coverage gives him, to me, an extra leg up on some of these guys that aren't capable of doing both. Get you a guy that can do both. Zach Bond can. Sets a firm edge in the run game. So despite being 238, does a solid job, especially against tight ends, of setting a physical edge in the run game. He's going to probably have to get bigger, though. No, there's no probably. He's going to have to get bigger. 238, and you're hoping he's not sacrificing explosiveness to get bigger, but he's going to have to get bigger at the NFL level. I can't anticipate 238 being good enough to hold the point at the point of attack. I just can't see that happening. Can shed and track ball carriers. So he can stack and shed and then get to the guy with the football. So that's when you see some of that closing speed and that explosiveness that we just mentioned. His weaknesses, still raw in his development as a rusher. Look, this guy had 15 career sacks, so 2.5 before 2019. So he wasn't getting the opportunity to rush as much. They turned him loose this 2019 season, and it paid off. So technical things he can clean up, hands, telegraphing. So he's telling the guy, all right, I'm setting you up for a spin, or I'm setting you up for a crossover. Like, instead of telegraphing what you're going to do. All your moves should look the same so they don't know what's coming. And then when to use the secondary rush. I don't think he understands quite the concept of, hey, the speed didn't work. Let me secondary spin back inside. I might fall into a sack or two. Once he figures that out as well, that'll turn him into an even more dominant force as an edge rusher. Would like to see him locate the football down the field in coverage. Too much face guarding because he's a guy that can run with tight ends and running backs, up the seam or down the sideline. I just want him to locate the football a little bit better. And he's raw in that capacity, and I'll talk about why. Can his size be a hindrance at the next level? Maybe. I've heard people talk about, oh, he's too small to be an edge rusher at the NFL level. We'll see. Injury concerns. He missed all of 2017 with a foot injury. So that's on the Carfax. And then he came to Wisconsin as a dual threat quarterback. So think about that for a second. This guy might have played some defense. Most likely in high school, you're playing both sides of the ball. He might have played some backer at high school, but he was a dual threat quarterback. That was his calling card. He had to come to Wisconsin and really hone in on being a defender at the linebacker position. And then he started to get some work as an edge rusher. And so he's still got a ways to go, but the upside is through the roof, man. And I was really impressed with what I saw, especially for a guy that really hasn't played that particular position and been asked to do that his entire life. That was pretty damn impressive. And for you to get him in the third round because of something like, I guess, PEDs, and I don't even know if it was really PED usage or is just a banned substance, whatever the case may be, this is a steal for you in the third round. My comp for you, for you, is Clay Matthews Jr. If this guy is anything like Clay Matthews coming off the edge, which he looks the part of, look out. And so in the third round, 74th pick overall, edge rusher out of Wisconsin, Zach Bond for me is a 5, man. This is a steal. And at a premium position in the league like edge rusher, to get one of the better ones in this particular draft where you did, that's stealing is what it is. As we get to the next selection in this draft for the Saints, the penultimate pick of this Saints draft. Third round, 105th pick overall, tight end out of Dayton, Adam Troutman is the pick. 6'5", 255, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.8 40, which I think really plummeted his draft stock. Had that been a 4.73, I don't think he's here for you to take. But the 4.80 probably alarmed some people. And when you watch him on tape, he didn't look the fastest on tape either. But you thought, okay, probably like a 4.7, no worse than a 4.75, right? 4.80 scared some teams, didn't scare the Saints. And it wouldn't have scared me either if I was in the market for a quarterback, or excuse me, a tight end. 70 grabs, 916 yards receiving, and 14 touchdowns in 11 games for the Dayton Flyers in 2019 for his career. 178 grabs, 2,295 yards, 31 scores in 44 contests. I had a day 2 grade on him second round. In more specific, I thought he was a second round tight end. Why did I think he was a second round tight end? Because I thought he was the number 1 tight end in this draft class. Thought he could do a little bit of everything, something that all the other tight ends in this draft class lacked. Either you were really good at blocking, not as good at pass catching. Either you were really good at pass catching, not as good at blocking. I thought he had the combination of the two, the best of any tight end in this draft. And he was still lacking, which is why he wasn't a first round pick. And I didn't think there was a first round caliber tight end in this draft class, but I thought he was the best of the group. And so for you to get him as the 5th tight end taken, again, stealing. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later. Strengths, his size at 6'5", 255. If he didn't gain another pound, he's ready to go right out of the packaging. All right, he doesn't need to do anything else. He'll probably gain a couple more pounds, maybe even lose a couple more pounds. But, you know, we always talk about these tight ends when they come in the league because they're usually 245 pounds, going to have to get bigger, going to have to get stronger. Well, he doesn't have to. He's already big enough at 6'5", 255. Big inviting target with huge catch radius. He's a big dude, man, and he's got long arms with 33-inch arms, and he can go and get the football. He can jump, so he extends that catch radius. He can go down and dig it out. So I saw a guy that's a big inviting target. When he turns his numbers to the quarterback, sits down in zone coverage, quarterback sees him very easily and can get him the rock. But if you need to throw it up high because there's a defender there and it's a contested ball, he can go up and get it. He's got really good hands, really soft hands, the drugstore cotton soft even, to catch the football. So again, guy you can get the football to in a lot of different situations. Can high point the football. Saw a lot of this from him at Dayton, where he was just essentially putting his nutsack on the helmet of a defender and going up and getting a rock. So this is a guy you can throw it up to, just like you have done with Jared Cook, where you just throw it up to him and he goes and gets it. You can do the same thing with Adam Troutman. Runs good routes and sells fakes. Some of that was probably a byproduct of him playing against Dayton defenders, or teams in the conference that Dayton was in. It was a smaller school. So probably a byproduct of that, him breaking dudes off and separating. But he sells fakes really well. You know, he's that guy that he looks like he's blocking down, and then he flares back out into the flats and he's wide open, or he looks like he's going on a zone block outside, only to take one fake step, come all the way across the formation, and now he's wide open in the opposite flats on the opposite side of the formation, wide open. He's a guy that sells fakes really well. Give you a nice little head and shoulders, break a dude off with some dandruff, head and shoulders, bam. Drops him off at the post, leaves him, goes to the corner. So he sells fakes really well. Willing participant in the blocking department. That was the thing that sold me as him being my number one tight end in this draft, is that he's got it in the blocking department. Can he get better? Absolutely, as every tight end in this draft class can. But he was better than those guys. And so I like that. He's a red zone threat. You know, I talked about the 14 touchdowns in 2019. It's a big number. I don't give a damn what conference you're in, what level of college football you're playing in. I don't care if you're playing against 8th graders. 14 touchdowns is a lot of damn touchdowns in one season. And so this is a guy that you can get the football to in the red zone, because I talked about his ability to go and get the football at its highest point and his catch radius, and him already being 6'5". It just makes for a guy that you can split out wide against a 6-foot safety and say, hey, big boy, go and get it. Physicality and yards after contact. Not going to make anybody miss, but he will drag a couple guys along for the ride. You know, put your seatbelt on. If you're not physical as a tackler, you can get on and take this 5-yard ride if you'd like. So he's definitely physical and able to drag defenders that aren't strong enough to get him down on the ground. Has some agility for his size, as I talked about. He can break dudes off at the stem of a route and separate. Maybe that was just because he was playing at Dayton. Maybe it's not. We're going to find out. The 4.80 40 shouldn't lead you to believe he can't work in tight spaces with quickness. Those two are not the same. Long distance speed and quickness are not the same. Maybe he can break dudes off. We'll see. Production, as I mentioned, big time numbers, man. The 31 touchdowns is the number that jumps out and sticks out like a sore thumb for me. That's a lot of damn touchdowns. 14 in one season, a lot of damn touchdowns. So that's some pretty lofty numbers that he put up in 44 games. And then understands leverage. As a bigger tight end, you're going to have guys in your hip pocket that are athletically gifted that can stay with you, much like a Jason Witten. He's my greatest example. I always pull Jason Witten out of my back pocket when I'm talking leverage, because as a tight end, you got to understand that you can lean on a guy, and at the top of that route, you can even give him a little shoulder action, nudge him, and then if you want to add some sauce to it, because there's nothing wrong with a little bit of sauce. Nobody wants a dry route, right? You can add a little elbow. Don't extend. Don't chicken hawk him. A little elbow to go with that little nudge, little sauce there at the end. And then you lean on him, and then you fade into your route. And now that guy's going that way, and you're going that way. And so that's what Jason Witten has made a living off of. Jason Witten wasn't able to break dudes off, but you know what he was able to do? Be savvy enough to understand leverage. How to get a guy leaning one way, push him that way, and then break to the other way. And so Adam Troutman understands leverage and how to gain it, how to stair step a guy as he's going across the field. Work up, work over, work up, work over, and now that guy's on your back hip and he can't get through you to get to the football because you're 6'5", 255. He understands leverage. Weaknesses can be jammed up a bit at the line of scrimmage. When you watch him versus San Diego, boy, they laid hands on his ass. They said, look, we are going to be physical with Adam Troutman, and if he beats us being physical with him, so be it. But we ain't allowing this big son of a bitch to get a free release. He's going to have to earn this. And so, boy, did they lay hands on his ass, and he struggled with that damn jam. Boy, they hemmed his ass up. He's going to have to be better versus the jam, or he's going to see a lot of jam. Jam at the next level. They're going to put hands on him. Dominant versus lesser competition. Will it translate? I never question a guy for doing what he was supposed to do. He dominated lesser competition. That's what you're supposed to do. All right. All you can do is beat up the guys they put in front of you. Now, there is a question to be asked, though. Can he do that at the next level? But he did his job, which is what got him drafted. Can you do that at the next level? Like to see him catch the ball better in traffic. I think that's why I didn't mention him as a guy that catches it in traffic very well. I'd like to see him focus a little bit better with traffic and trash around him and still find a way to come away with the football. That being that big of a target, you're going to have to be able to catch the football with guys around you, with bodies around you, with arms around you. Focus in on the task at hand, snatch that football, and corral it. So I'd like to see him be better at that. He was a high school quarterback before making the transition to tight end his freshman year of college. So again, another guy that has tremendous upside that hasn't been doing this for very long, which is another reason why I was so high on Adam Troutman, because I'm like, he still hasn't quite scratched the full surface yet. So my comp for him on the low end of the scale is a guy you know very well. You played him 2 times a year in your division in Austin Hooper. That's at the low end. All right. That's on the low side. High end. If this guy maximizes all of his talents and gets a little quicker at the NFL level and maybe a little faster, he's Travis Kelce. That's at his peak. That's if everything goes well and he fully maximizes out his potential in this league. He's Travis Kelce. I don't think he gets there, but at worst, he's Austin Hooper. You take that, right? Right. So in the 3rd round, 105th overall selection, tight end out of Dayton, Adam Troutman for me is a 5. You stole him in the 3rd round when I thought he should have been gone by the 2nd. You got what I perceive to be the best tight end in this draft. And I look at him and I say, he doesn't even have to come in right away and produce big numbers for you. But I just told you that the floor for him is extremely high and the ceiling is even higher. So I just love that selection, and I love the player that you're getting here in Adam Troutman, potentially. As we wrap up this Saints draft here, in the 7th round, 240th pick overall, quarterback out of Mississippi State, Tommy Stevens is the pick. 6'5", 235 was what he was listed as at Mississippi State, but at his pro day, he weighed in at 247 and ran a 4.4 940. So those are some really, really impressive numbers. And I'm going to give you his passing stats and his rushing stats, but honestly speaking, he's nobody's quarterback right now. Tommy Stevens, if this were anybody but New England or New Orleans, this is a 1. He didn't deserve to be drafted. However, those 2 teams out of all the teams would know what to do with a guy like Tommy Stevens. Now, I will say this. I don't know if Tommy Stevens has mentally prepared himself to be a gadget guy, to be a Taysom Hill at the next level. Remember, Tim Tebow could have easily been Taysom Hill before Taysom Hill. He did not want to do it. Okay? There is a certain mindset that goes into being something other than a quarterback. Excuse me. So he's got to make that decision that whatever they ask me to do, I'll do it, and I'll do it with a smile on my face. And I'm thinking that 247 says that he's prepared to do whatever. Fullback, halfback, wing back, tight end, whatever you need. Personal protector, I'll do it. And this fits right in line with what the Saints do. 97 completions out of 161 attempts for a 60% completion percentage, 1,155 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, over 5 INTs in 2019 for the Mississippi State Bulldogs in 9 games. In that same time frame, he had 83 rushes for 381 yards and 4 scores. As I mentioned, I didn't have a draftable grade on him, but the Saints are the perfect match for him because they've got experience taking a guy with a quarterback background and using them in a multitude of ways. Really, his strengths He's a gadget guy. You bring him in, and this is a guy that can throw it, man. He's got a rocket. Like Taysom Hill's arm is good at best. You know, he didn't have a great arm. Tommy Stevens can launch the football. He's got a rocket for a right arm. So if you're trying gadget plays and things of that nature, he can throw it from multiple platforms. Seemed like he always had pressure in his face at Mississippi State. So he was always throwing off his back foot and from different platforms, and he can let it rip. All right. You talk about athleticism. This guy has it in spades. Like the 4.49 would have been the fastest speed of any quarterback at the combine had he been there. He ran the short shuttle in like the sixth best time of any quarterback at the combine. And you know, just the agility that this guy brings to the table is off the charts. All right. So he can move. He's an athlete is what I'm telling you. I watched him against Alabama. He was running with them Alabama defenders. Like he was smoking those dudes. He had like almost 100 yards rushing versus Bama. Broke off a couple of big runs on some of those read option keepers. And he was running with those boys, man. He showed off the wheels. So he can run. He's an athlete, all right? And when he was at Penn State, remember, he transferred from Penn State. He was an athlete. They would put him at receiver. They would put him at running back. They would do some wildcat stuff with him. They tried ways to integrate and get him into the game because he wasn't getting in over Trace McSorley. That was the guy that kept him on the bench all those years. So they would find creative ways to try to get Tommy Stevens involved because he was such a great athlete. And so that's what you're getting here is a guy that's an athlete. What I didn't see, though, was a bunch of toughness. Like, he wasn't trying to get hit. He wasn't lowering the shoulder. And I get it. When you're a quarterback, you try to minimize as many hits as you're taking. But there were a couple of times where you're like, hey, Tommy, you could have got a little extra there. You're a big boy. You're 6'5", 230. You could have lowered the shoulder there and maybe picked up an extra couple yards. But in your mind, when you're thinking, I'm a quarterback, I need to protect myself, I kind of get it. I back off a bit. But I didn't see a guy that looked like he was ready for the physical nature of being a fullback or being a tight end or being a wing back. I didn't see that necessarily, but he can catch it too. They threw it to him at Penn State. So there's a little bit of that Taysom Hill factor here. Weakness is he's not a great quarterback. A lot left to be desired. Very inaccurate with the football. Ball gets away from him at times. As I just mentioned, I don't know if that level of physicality that you need that Taysom Hill has, I don't know if he possesses that or not. I can tell you this much. Taysom Hill was running dudes over at Utah State once upon a time. Like, Taysom Hill came in ready to do whatever it was going to take to make the roster. I'm not saying Tommy Stevens isn't ready to do that, but I didn't see that same level of physicality coming into the league. He was sliding. He was trying to get out of bounds. He was trying to get out of dodge. And Taysom Hill was lowering the shoulder back at Utah State. So I didn't see that level of physicality that is necessary for a guy, but he's damn near 250. All right. So hopefully he's able to turn on that switch and be a tough guy. And mentally, more so than anything else, because the athleticism is here, all the physical characteristics and traits are here. Mentally is what you got to ask yourself. Is he prepared to give up on his dream of being a quarterback and solely dedicate himself to being whatever is up for him, whatever the coaching staff has in mind for him, whether it's personal protector on punts, whether it's gunner on punts, whether it's fullback on this particular play, sneak into the flats, catch the football. Maybe you got to go be a lead blocker and lay the wood on a linebacker. Maybe you're a tight end on this particular play. You're a wing back and you got to be the lead blocker on this outside zone. All right. Whatever the case may be, he's got to mentally be prepared to do that. I don't know if he's there or not, but he was limited to just 9 games at Mississippi State due to an ankle injury after being a graduate transfer from Penn State. So that's also on the Carfax. Look, again, if this were anybody but New England or New Orleans, this is a 1. All right. But because I know of what Sean Payton is capable of with this kind of an athlete at that particular position, we already know who the comp is. You know, this is low-hanging fruit, and I'm glad to grab it down. It's obviously Taysom Hill. And now you ask yourself, is this a power play by the Saints? Is Sean Payton saying to themselves, because they signed him to an extension, an awful lot of money for a guy that's a gadget guy, are they saying we got to have our Taysom Hill backup just in case Taysom Hill gets hurt? Or maybe there's an exit ramp with that Taysom Hill 3-year deal they signed him to, that extension. And maybe they're saying to themselves, maybe we can get out of this thing after 2 years. And we got the guy that's going to step in and do what we've asked Taysom Hill to do for the last 3-4 years. So I think at a minimum, Tommy Stevens is their Taysom Hill backup, because Taysom Hill does so many things for them on a weekly basis that if he gets hurt, they're screwed. Now you don't have to worry about that. He gets hurt, Tommy Stevens is ready to step in. And so in the 7th round, 240th pick overall, quarterback, we're going to call him a quarterback for now. Tommy Stevens is a 3 to wrap up this Saints draft. Thought it was a brilliant, genius idea on the part of the Saints to get a backup for Taysom Hill, essentially. And maybe he'll take over ultimately for Taysom Hill down the road. But for right now, he's nothing more than a backup to Taysom Hill, and you need that. All right, you need that, and you have it now. But I can't give you a grade. It's incomplete. It's only 4 picks. You know, it's going to skew the grade. It's not enough of a sample size to give you a grade here, but you see how I feel about these selections. You see how I feel about this Saints roster. Mickey Loomis and company have did a phenomenal job of acquiring talent, not only through the draft, but also in free agency. Whether you're talking about a guy like Demario Davis or even getting Janoris Jenkins this offseason in free agency. We don't know what Jack Rabbit has left in the tank, but if he's anything like he was in New York for the Giants, that's a steal. It's a tremendous upgrade over Eli Apple. You know, the last time you went to New York and got a guy, it didn't work out very well for you. This guy's much better if he's still playing at a high level. So the moves you made and getting an E-Man Sand in free agency, these are the types of moves that have allowed you to be in a position to have a 4-player draft and not really be any worse for wear. Love this draft, as abbreviated as it was. But this is a team that if they can put it all together, they've had heartbreak the last 3 years in the postseason. This could be the year they finally get over the hump. We will see. But nonetheless, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the draft wrap-up series of the New Orleans Saints. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage. It could be. Make sure you subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. Make sure that you hit that like button and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing here on the Louie T Network. And also, if you're into podcasts, Louie T Network Podcast, giving you all the flavor and heat you need to get you going and keep you going through the offseason and into the regular season and through the postseason. I got you covered. Wherever podcasts are available, you'll find the Louie T Network Podcast. Brand new episode up and available, so check that out. But until next time, you guys know what it is. Take care of yourself and your family. Stay safe. We'll reconvene at a later date and time and talk more Saints football. So don't you go anywhere. But in the meantime, have a good one.